Hey guys, Saga here, and today's video is going to be a crash course in very basic Roadhog. This was requested by a whole ton of people, so I decided to go ahead and make a video about it. I already put out an advanced guide for Roadhog, as well as like a guide looking over some Grandmaster footage and talking about some of the small mistakes they were making, but I never really covered the basics, and that's kind of the wrong way to go about problem solving. If you have a problem with your computer, the first thing you should do is check, is it plugged in? And this guide's kinda gonna be that kind of information, starting at the bottom and working its way up. This is not a complete guide by any means, but meant to serve as a stepping stone to my other guides. So that way there's like a complete Roadhog compendium out there that I can refer you guys to. But if you wanna know how to get out of training mode and onto the streets to start hooking, this is the guide for you. Alright, let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand is effective range. Roadhog is extremely effective at two ranges, both point blank and from 10 meters away. These are his sweet spots. This is where he does the maximum amount of damage and can one-shot a lot of heroes. This is what you're always aiming for. Any further back and his damage begins to suffer from fall off, and any further forward and you get in this awkward range where both right and left click seem wrong. Now the basic rule for being in this awkward in-between range, which is like sub 10 meters, is to use your left click. If the explosive ball he shoots out of his gun with his right click does not explode, you don't want to use it. The damage is always going to be less than your left click. So if you're in this in-between range, use left click. And for those who are fighting Roadhog at a semi-close range, like Reaper, this is the zone you want to stand in. This is his dead zone. If you remember back in the day in WoW, people used to dead zone warriors, like a rogue would stand in between, like out of their charge range, but not close enough to be melee hit. This is the same thing. Roadhog is, in a lot of ways, like a fighting game character. He's got a bunch of cancels, where one move cancels the lag of another move. Now, this is pretty generic in Overwatch, like a lot of different characters can cancel lag, but Roadhog I think makes more use of it than other people do. Alright, the first combo and the most basic is just left mouse button into melee. If you are right in someone's face, you want to go for this, especially if they are a 200 health hero. The only time I don't suggest this is if you're in someone's face who is going to survive the melee. Shooting your shotgun twice at point blank range would be a better follow-up, or shotgun blast, hook, shotgun blast. Then we have the most basic of hook combos, which is hook, left mouse button, melee. A little trick for this, if you want to get the timing on the shotgun blast perfect every time, like at the first possible second, you can actually hold the left mouse button and it will fire the second that the hook is out. And then you immediately cancel that into melee. Alright, and this is the complete combo. The complete combo is right mouse button, hook, left mouse button, melee. The way to do this perfectly is right after you hook, fire your shotgun, and immediately after you shotgun to cancel it into a melee. Sometimes it's so fast the melee animation doesn't fully register on the Roadhog, and that's fine, it still hit, trust me. But it's a very common mistake that people will wait to melee. And that's wrong. You actually want to do it instantly because certain characters will be able to use their shift abilities to escape if you don't melee instantaneously. So you want a shotgun blast, and the second your shotgun animation starts, you want to immediately cancel into a melee. Guys, this is going to sound foolish, but I want you to think about this game like it's a fighting game. And Roadhog is a character who has combos. And you landing those combos perfectly is the difference between being very consistent and only kind of consistent with your hook follow-up kills. So you can't be meleeing late, you can't be shotgunning too late. You have to practice your combos, is basically what I'm getting at. Build the muscle memory, understand the timing, and most of all, realize when you're doing it too slow and correct that. This is the most insidious type of mistake, as most people don't even realize they're doing something wrong. They're like, oh, but I meleeed, how did he get away? Well, you did it too slow. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is his reload combo. Every time you start reloading, you can cancel the lag of reloading by eating right after the bullet enters the gun. And if you look into the bottom right of the screen where it shows the 3 out of 4 bullets or however many bullets or 0 out of 4, when you reload that, it'll show the 4. And the second that 4 comes up, that's your cue to start eating. This is a super important combo. And if you don't do this right, you're gonna be wasting a lot of time afterward reloading. The only exception to doing this, you should do this every single time you can, but the only exception is when you are dying and you are really, really dying, and you know that if you go for the reload to eat, you are going to die before it's over. In that case, you go for the eat first. But it's only in desperate situations. You want to get used to doing this. You want to get used to doing it right. Alright, so let's talk about the basics of hooking. When I throw a hook at somebody, I always throw it slightly above them and slightly in front of the direction that they're going. I throw it in a diagonal from where they're positioned. This is important because if they jump, my hook will register and catch them during the jump arc because I'm slightly ahead of them and I'm slightly elevated. If you apply this method and just aim in diagonals no matter what position they're in, whether they're in air or they're on the ground. This will make hooking so much easier, you have no idea. You almost never are throwing a hook straight. It's always a lead in front shot, just like his right mouse button. You should think about the right mouse button almost the same way. And the sweet spot for the right mouse button is almost in the same place as it is for the hook. Just, you have to aim it a little bit more to the person. For those of you who don't know, the hook has got a very large hitbox. It's about, it's like a small door. It's like you're throwing a door at someone. If you'd like to hear more about this door analogy, please check out the OhNickel video that should be going up probably about now. And I'll leave a link to that in the description, where I talk about 10 obscure Roadhog tricks. A really good use of the practice spots is to head up here to the second floor and practice hooking people from that angle. In between your hook cooldowns, I like to practice my right mouse button. This is a good range where it lets you feel whether or not you're placing your shots right. I like to think about it as shot placement as opposed to aiming, because that's what you're doing, right? You're like placing it so that it explodes in the right place. When I think aiming, I think like hit scan, I think like keeping it on the character, and that's really not what you're doing. You're aiming in front of their momentum. It's more similar to a hook than it is to your average hit scan character. I suggest you continue doing this until you're landing all your shots. This is a very easy way to get a basic feel and to like warm up if it's your first game of the day. Sometimes like going in cold is just an easy way to lose a match. I find that this training dummy is also kind of useful. It lets you get used to hooking from the low ground to the high ground, which are some of your harder hooks. I also like to practice flicking and like re-flicking to the same spot. So this is something that I practiced a lot when I played McCree, and this helped me a lot, but it also helps with Roadhog, with landing the right mouse buttons, and with landing your lefts too. So what you do is basically position yourself among the training dummies and practice flicking back to them immediately. This helps build muscle memory about where things are positioned on screen and how to get back to that same spot just by feel. Play with effective range, play with your combos, get a feel for how Roadhog feels before you take him out into the streets. Basically, you want to use your training mode dummies like a wooden martial arts dummy. Practicing hitting the dummy is useful, but what also helps is conceptualizing. I'm talking imagine a vivid picture of a battlefield. Imagine something happening or a circumstance. Put constraints on yourself, like you have to jump and make this, you have to throw it to the left, you have to hook him at the first possible second, and just play with the dummies. Sometimes people think this is ridiculous when I say this, but like visualization is always a good way to do something that you've never done before you do it. And that's what you can really use training mode to do. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is when to use Roadhog. Roadhog is an acceptable tank to pick almost all the time and almost on any map. However, sometimes other tanks would be better suited for the role. And it's important to keep in mind the needs of your group. If your team is having trouble pushing a choke, maybe Roadhog is not the best pick for you. Maybe a Reinhardt or a Diva would help more. However, there's really not a map that's bad for Roadhog. There's really not a map where you would say, okay, you don't want to play Roadhog here. In fact, certain maps are built in a way that you absolutely want to play Roadhog there, taking advantage of things like death pits and places on the map where whole hog can knock things off. I don't think we're ever going to get back to a place where one tank makes sense, but if for some reason one tank does make sense, I would not say that Roadhog be that tank. I would not say that Roadhog be that tank. I wouldn't pick Roadhog as my main tank, is what I'm trying to say. Alright guys, if you're new here, my name is Saga. I create Overwatch content and Hearthstone content. I've got a new show called Appreciating Gaming. I travel the world, I vlog, I do all kinds of things. If that stuff sounds cool to you, please subscribe. And if you'd like to see some of my other work, here is my Roadhog Advanced Guide. And over here is a link to 10 obscure Roadhog tricks, which is exclusive content I did for the OhNickel channel. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, go and check it out. And definitely go subscribe while you're checking it out. Alright, I'll see you next time.